Hi, I'm Jess,
Hi, I'm Kristen.
and this is ReDIScover, a conversation where we travel through everything that makes up the essence of who we are and how to live authentically and imaginatively.
Here, we invite you to join us as we explore and discuss a little bit of, well, everything.
From Disney to cultivating your most authentic life to deepening your relationships and talking about the real stuff.
We hope you'll find this a space that speaks to you, encourages you, and brings a little bit of magic into your day.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess,
Hi, I'm Kristen.
and welcome back to this week's episode of ReDIScover.
Today is a very fun day here in ReDIScover Summer School. We really wanted to structure this month like what are the elements of being at school other than being in class and being in a classroom that are really the most resonant. So we really wanted to structure this in the sense that you're writing into your school newspaper or maybe visiting the guidance counselor or Ask Abby or those newspaper columns that used to take anonymous advice questions. And so if you saw on Instagram, Jess and I both put up some Ask J and K boxes, and some of you sent really thought-provoking, good, insightful questions. So we're excited.
We wanted to thank you guys for showing up and being vulnerable. And we are keeping all of these questions anonymous, but thank you for trusting us to answer them. And we're really excited to dive in. And we want to give a disclaimer. Of course, this is just our opinions, and we are not professional therapists, guidance counselors, psychologists, anything like that. These are just opinions based on our own personal experience. So take what resonates with you, leave what doesn't. But I think it's going to be a really great and insightful discussion.
So we're going to dive right in. Grab some coffee, grab a snack, and settle in for your guidance session. This one says, I'm 29, 2 children, but I feel old. Early 20-year-olds saying about skinny jeans and side parts being lame, and I've taken it to heart. I'm exhausted, but trying to still be fun and young, but they make me feel increasingly worse about myself by the day. How can I show my own daughters I'm trying hard to keep myself young and healthy by being active and eating well without saying, I'm fat, my gosh? I just can't kick the feeling that people look at me and say, ugh, she's too old for that.
Fantastic submission. And I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to that feeling. From my perception, I think that age is just a number. 29, if you are going to live to be 80 years old, let's say, you're only a small portion of the way through your life at that point. You have about 50 more years of life to live. So you can take that amount of time and do anything you want with it, which is kind of exciting and inspiring because you can take your life in your own hands. We have to touch on this whole skinny jeans side part thing because I think that's a really big topic that's come up, especially for millennials, which is our age group. I think one of the things when that started to come out, because I was like, oh God, like I do side parts. I wear skinny jeans like every day. So I kind of looked at it objectively, like the statement and the opinion. And I was like, okay, this is just a judgment. And is this necessarily true? I don't think it's necessarily true unless you make it true. So I think what we do oftentimes is we assign meaning to things that don't necessarily mean one thing or the other. We can assign it a positive meaning, we can assign it a negative meaning. But at the end of the day, it's just a thing that you're wearing or a thing that you're doing with your hair. So if you are taking these things to heart and labeling them as old, then you might kind of take on that persona of feeling quote unquote old, or you can take it on as this is just a choice that I make for my appearance and I like it, so I'm going to do it. And that's okay. And I think it's really leaning into acceptance of oneself, accepting where you are on your journey. Oh my gosh, I'm 29 and I have 2 beautiful children and I have so much life to live, but I'm going to get really present in today. And being old, it's not my identity, and I'm not going to define myself by that. I'm just going to be who I am today on whatever day it is, whatever time it is. And a lot easier said than done a lot of the time, but being able to really presence yourself in the moment is huge. And also, I think a lot of it might come down to self-talk and positive self-talk. And especially when you have young kids, kids are a sponge. And I remember being a kid and being a sponge. I remember working with kids and seeing how much they take in everything you say. And I actually saw this video once with this mom, and she kind of struggled with something similarly to what you're asking in this question. And she started every time she walked by the mirror, she was like, wow, I'm so beautiful. Wow, I look amazing today for her kids. Like she did it so she would hype herself up in front of her kids so they would have a really positive example. But then over time, she started to actually believe it and embody that herself. And it's the same concept that we talk about when it comes to affirmations. The more that you rewire your brain and really lean into the repetition and saying it over and over and over again, that's where the change comes from, because the change comes from inside of you. You can't control what Gen Zs are going to say. You can't control where society is going to go, but you can change your perception of how you are showing up in the world, what judgments you take to heart, what things you leave behind, and what you make true for yourself.
Wow. I would applaud you, but the clapping noise would just be so loud. Yes.
Thank
Um,
you.
First of all, I just want to say this question and what, the vulnerabilities that it embodies and the things that you're struggling with are very real for many of us. Even the Gen Zers that you look at and think they can't possibly be insecure. Everyone is. We all are. We all just wear it differently. We all embody it differently. I have a side part right now.
Me too.
and, and I still have skinny jeans in my closet. And I was telling Jess this yesterday, actually, and I think that it's something that's really helped me a lot. So I hope that it helps you. That I think I've said it on this podcast before, but I'm going to say it again. Nobody in my life loves me or cares about me because of what I wear, how much I weigh, what I look like, any of those external things. Your family, your close friends, your partner, they all love and care about you for the person that you are. And of course, maybe sometimes you meet friends with, similar style to you, and that's the thing that breaks the ice. And of course, like maybe your partner obviously would be the person who you would feel the most impact about your physical appearance with that person. But none of them on a core level love you for any of those things. They love you for the person that you are, and the external circumstances can have no effect on that. Like whatever is true for you and whatever is at your core cannot be taken from you and cannot be altered by having children or growing older. Like that soul that is in you, that spirit that you've had since you were a child is still alive and well. And I think we focus too much on the external because society has fed us these messages for so long. And who cares what pants you wear? Like at the end of the day, why does it really matter? And I think that there's a balance to be struck. Obviously, I'm not a mother, so I cannot speak from experience to the balance between being young and fun and also showing up as a mom, as, someone to be an advocate and give guidance and set an example and be like a safe haven and a rock for your children. And I think if you listen to last month's episodes, we definitely got into that with our own moms. And I think that there is a healthy balance of being someone who can have fun and roll with the punches and go with the flow and be childlike while also still being that wise figure, who your children can count on. So I think that that's a phase of life that Gen Z isn't in. So they can't really speak to that. And it's a really admirable, awesome thing. And like Jess was saying, like all the things that you do have, all those blessings, like I have 2 kids, I have little lives and little hearts that I can pour into and that I am responsible for. Like, what a huge gift. And I personally also enjoy, especially being a woman, that the older I get, the more people take me seriously. And I think that's something we sort of undervalue as we age and we get closer to our 30s or our 40s. Every year that goes by, I feel like people take me just a little more seriously, or I gain more life experience and more wisdom that to me is more valuable than what type of jeans I'm wearing or if I'm keeping up with the latest hair trends. Like that wisdom to me is like my rock to stand on, the thing that I lean on the most. So, just to conclude, what you're feeling is valid. And those insecurities are real and only exacerbated by the external noise. But if you can block that out and really start listening to the voice within you of who you really are, you'll start to notice that those things have less and less impact on your thoughts or your day.
Settling into that place of acceptance of I'm uncomfortable with these things, but that's okay.
Mhm.
And I'm at this point in my life, and that's okay. And there's actually so many beautiful things that I get to experience that I'm not seeing in the behind the scenes of these quote unquote young people.
Yes.
And it's kind of a beautiful thing when you can look at your own life and kind of do a life audit and be like, wow, there's a lot going on. And I wouldn't, have all of these amazing things going on if I wasn't at this place in my life. And my life is only going to get more full and more fulfilled. And how can it get better than this?
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal question. Like we said, thank you for your vulnerability and thank you for bringing that to the table because I think that is going to resonate with so many people.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 2 for our advice column episode. And here we go. Another really great question. I graduated college a few months ago and I still haven't been hired for a job in my field. It seems like basically all of my classmates I had in my major have found something, and I feel like I'm the only one who hasn't. Any advice on how to cope with the lack of confidence I am feeling and stress that I'm experiencing from this? Thank you.
This is a great one. This is one I think a lot of us can relate to, whether it's
Yes.
due to, graduating or the panorama. Um, I personally can relate to this. I think the first thing you do is you broaden your scope. Maybe everyone in your class has found a job, but zoom out a little more and kind of look at the situation at large. And the reality is that there are a lot of people looking for jobs in their field that have graduated months and years ago. And it's just, the result of, especially right now, like a big restructuring of how the workplace functions and a lot of businesses closing during the pandemic and a lot of startups sort of trying to get their footing and not really knowing what they need or what those roles look like yet. So I think the first thing to do is give yourself some grace. You got a degree. Congratulations. First of all, that's awesome. Like, take a minute and celebrate that. And then, I mean, I can't even tell you how many job sites that I've been on over the
Mhm.
course of the pandemic. There was like a good 6 months after I left my job in New York that I was, serving while I was looking for another job. And I would wake up every morning and look on LinkedIn and Glassdoor and every job site like anyone could ever recommend to me. I had my mom and my brother like comb my resume and edit it for me and help me with that. And so there's all those very practical steps you can take, but I think on a more fundamental level, your confidence taking a hit is a very natural reaction to looking around you and feeling like everyone else is ahead of the game or ahead of you in the race. But the reality is, it's not a race. And I believe in the unique story of my life and everyone else's lives and your life. So I'm sort of the mindset that there is a beautiful story unfolding for my life and a beautiful mission for my life that every single season and every single step is actually contributing to. And it's those things that actually make your life. So, whatever season of waiting you're in right now, there's actually so much good that's being done. And when you arrive at that destination of the job that you will find, you will probably feel a sense of oh, okay, this timing is pretty perfect, or this situation is great. I'm glad that I waited for it. Just extend yourself some grace and know that you are very much not alone and that your story is unfolding in its perfect time. And as frustrating as it can be, some things really are worth waiting for. And I would say just show up intentionally every day, still be on the hunt for jobs, still put your resume out there and be open. But yeah, just zoom out a little and extend yourself the courtesy that you would extend to a friend or maybe a sibling who is experiencing the same thing. You would probably tell them like, don't be so hard on yourself. It'll come to you, don't worry. And it seems so simple, but if you actually just practice it in small ways every day while still being intentional, it'll come to you, I promise.
This is a phenomenal question, and I also relate to this on a very deep level. Just from my post-college experience, this has been kind of a theme, It's like I've kind of been hopping in jobs, out of jobs, trying to find what really lights my soul up. And sometimes that doesn't come from one specific job. Sometimes it comes from the whole journey. And like Kristen was saying, really lean into the fact that you are on the perfect path and trust in the divine timing of your life. Because when you do finally get to that job that is the one that's perfect at that time, it may not be a forever job. It may just be that next one that really lights you up. You're going to look back and be like, thank goodness I had that waiting period. Thank goodness that I was available and had the freedom to transition into this job at this time, because it really is so aligned with me and it makes me so happy. And this is what I was looking for. And you have to remember too, a lot of the people that are in your class that maybe have found jobs now, they might have something on the outside and they might have it externally, like you see them working a job, but you don't know what the behind the scenes is. You don't know if they are happy with that, or you don't know if they are rethinking their life path. So everything on the outside may look all put together, but you never know what the story is on the inside. So really, as hard as it is sometimes, try and change your focus from comparing yourself to these other people and focus more on your journey, and take the focus off the lack of the job and transition that more into a trust that the job is coming. Like, it is coming to you right now. Who knows? Maybe by this episode release, you might even have the job already, but you never know. So, I mean, yes, do all of the aligned actions that you need to do. Go on the job site, submit your resumes, do all of those tangible things to really signal out there, like, I'm ready for this. I'm ready to step into this. But then you can also, for your own personal growth, if this is something that you would like to do, try and get more energetically aligned with it within yourself. Maybe write a list of generic qualities you'd like from a job. Like, what would be your ideal schedule? What would be your ideal day? What would be your ideal tasks that you would do? And start to feel into that. See what you're actually looking for, because then the more you can get in touch with that and get clearer about what you want for your job and your career, the easier it's going to be, and it's going to just attract right to you. I mean, we've talked about law of attraction so many times, but jobs are a perfect thing to try with that. And it's really remarkable how it kind of works out. And you will know, like, it will pop up to you and you'll be like, wow, this just feels really different. It feels weirdly easy, but it's because you got clear about what you wanted. And I think kind of dabbling into that instead of getting stuck in the like swirl of it doesn't exist, I don't know what to do, giving yourself a break from that, honoring that, but being like, okay, I'm just going to kind of think about what it would be like to have this job that would really light me up and make me excited. There's like so much freedom in that, because you can just let your imagination go and trust that a lot of those things very, very well could come to you, and they could come fast. You never know how things are going to pan out. So there's a lot of hope in there, which I think is really exciting. And we are both excited to see what you end up doing. So, best of luck, and let us know when you get that dream job. We are very excited for you.
Yeah, we'd love to hear about it. Okay, moving right along. Question number 3. How do you and Jess manage your expectations not being met? I tend to be an idealistic person and a dreamer, so I often find that things don't play out the way I envision them. I try to be grateful for whatever comes my way, but when you build things up in your mind for a while, it's difficult not to compare it to your picture perfect outcome.
Hello, fellow idealistic dreamer here. This question really hit home for me, as I'm sure it did for so many other people who are listening, because I think this is something I've struggled with for a good majority of my life. And I've had to untangle a lot around this subject. So, having expectations, number one, I just want to say flat out, is a normal part of the human experience. So, if you have expectations for things, that is okay. You're human. And sometimes having positive expectations can be really good because it can get you really excited about something. You can start envisioning what it would feel like, and that aligns your energy to the things that you desire. Where we get tripped up, though, is we envision the how, I like to call it. We envision how we want it to go. We get attached to this how. We get attached to people, places, things, the way things are unfolding, how it's going to happen, and all of this extra criteria. The key piece of knowing that you really want to get is that figuring out the how is not your job. We get attached to the how, and that's where the pain often comes from when it comes to having these high expectations. An attachment, you may have heard this before. This is a very deep spiritual teaching, but attachment is often the root of human suffering. So, that being said, it's not always easy to detach from things. However, the more you can detach from things, the more things can flow more easily to you. You'll hear those phrases. You'll hear detach from the outcome, trust and surrender, let go. That's the main way I deal with expectations. And I've had to retrain my brain to start thinking that whatever happens is in my highest good, because everything that happens is in divine timing. So how do I justify knowing that everything is in divine timing? Well, I zoom out. I acknowledge that I am one little tiny human, and as much as I want to believe that my way is super ideal and totally foolproof and destined for success, I have to accept the fact that there is so much that I don't know. Like, when you really think about it, zoom out, think about how there are ecosystems in nature that just flow without any assistance from man. Like, they were just created. If you just think of the body, you can think of a human body, an animal body, any body, but the insides of a body just operate like automatically. Like, you don't have to remind yourself to breathe. And that's a miracle in itself. So to me, that is creation energy, or divine energy, or God, whatever you want to call it. So when I'm thinking about having expectations in my life and when they don't get met, my human self gets disappointed. I get embarrassed. I get frustrated. I feel ashamed sometimes. But there's this higher knowing part of me that connects to this creation energy that knows that that same force of energy that is flowing through everything I just described, that source of energy is flowing through my life, and it is orchestrating my life. And yes, we have free will, but that same energy is responding to the choices that we make. So even if my human self is upset about something that didn't go the way that I expected it to go, What I don't know is that this piece of the puzzle that I may be really frustrated about right now may be leading me on my path to some greater good. You could even call it like some greater destiny. I don't believe in one like destination point. I believe life is a whole path and a whole journey the entire time. But I really had to take the concept of expectations and zoom out and be like, okay, everything is happening for my highest good, whether or not I can see it, and literally trust falling into believing that. So, how do you start believing that? That is a huge question and a great question. And I think it comes down to rewiring your brain and your perspective. So, mantras I tell myself all of the time: everything is always working out for me. The universe is conspiring in my favor. Everything is working out for my highest good. Everything is perfect. Everything is happening in divine timing. So that's a really, really good base outlook to have. It's kind of like your security blanket. Like, you know you're going to be okay no matter what. So from there, if you have something up on a pedestal right now, or if you have an expectation for something, my manifesting coach, Amy Westmoreland, who we interviewed, I'll link her in the show notes, but one of her tricks is to say, I want this, but I don't need it. When you say that, you're signaling, yes, this is my desire. I do want it, but I can survive without it. I will be okay either way. When you are not holding on for dear life, things happen so much easier. And I feel like I'm talking to myself during this because it's something that I struggle with so bad still, because I have that human part of me, and she's so cute, and she's just trying to protect my feelings. Like, if you really think about it, like these disappointed feelings when your expectations don't get met are all kind of based on a past experience or a fear. So your thoughts are really just trying to protect you and ultimately make you feel safe. Know that you're going to be okay whether or not things happen exactly the way you want them to happen. And leave space open for things to be better than you could imagine. Like, literally ask out loud, how can things get better than this? People always say, how could things get any worse? Or what could go wrong? You see it in TV, you see it in the media, you see it with your friends and your family. You don't want to ask that. That is just signaling out there like, hey, universe, show me what can go wrong. So flip it, ask, how could things get better than this? And that signals out to the universe, hey, show me what could go even better. It's a very simple thing, and it's such a slight switch of dialogue, and it opens up so much. I think really the main thing is just being as detached as you possibly can from the how, like how it's going to work out. I think that's where I get tripped up, is I want things to show up a certain way. And when they don't, I get upset. And sometimes I miss the beautiful orchestration of what is and what actually happened, because my mind is so clouded on the expectation that I had that I can't even appreciate what actually did happen and how miraculous it actually was. I think I've found that life doesn't really go the way that I thought it was going to go a lot of the time. But I look at my life and I'm like, I'm kind of happy because I really like what I have. And I would be sad if I didn't have the things that I have now. Like, this is my life. This is my story, and I love it. Like, there's parts, of course, that I want to change and improve and, move forward from. But I think we are all at the right place at the right time, quote unquote. Like, we're always in the right place because we're being guided every minute of every day. So, yeah. Having expectations is not a bad thing. It is a very natural thing, and it's okay.
Also, that was not fluff. Jess actually does say this is perfect all the time, because sometimes when I'm going through it and I'm talking to her about something, she's like, it's perfect. Everything's working out. I'm like, no, it is not.
Yeah. And You can, your brain will fight you on it, but the more
Yes.
you say it, you're just like, okay, I'm leaning into it. And
Mhm.
I mean, even right now at this phase of my life, I'm like, oh my God, everything feels so chaotic and stressful and whatever. But I'm like, I just have this inherent belief and knowing, I'm like, you know what? Things are just working out. I don't know how I know that. I'm just going to go with it. And when you get those moments of like true alignment and excitement, it makes it all worth it. So,
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's almost like you're saying, like you almost have to rewire your expectations rather than manage them not being met. Again, like zooming out and looking at the thing as a whole while you still remain in that epicenter of goodness. Like Jess is saying, like everything is working for my highest good. So if you're in the middle and everything like stems out from you, like spokes on a wheel. If everything in your life comes out from you at the epicenter, so your career, your relationships, your home, your hobbies, whatever they are, if you simply move toward those things and turn your direction whichever way, you're being called, whichever thing needs your time and attention and care, and you just step intentionally towards them, things will work out. Like it sounds so simple, but they do have a funny way of working out. If you wake up every day and say, like, I'm just going to try the hardest I can, I'm going to do the best I can with whatever comes my way. And then at the end of the day, you can look back and go, okay, I did that. Then that's exciting. That's rewarding, gratifying. And then you can put your head on the pillow at night knowing, okay, that's that day done. And it was good. Maybe it wasn't amazing and awe-inspiring and like wonderfully memorable, but it was good. And I think the gratitude piece is a huge part of that. I know you had said about trying to be grateful for whatever comes your way, but when you build things up in your mind, it's difficult not to compare it to that picture perfect outcome. I think this becomes a gratitude for the small things practice. And I would totally recommend getting a journal, even if it's just paper with lines. I would say, something pragmatic I would advise would be take 5 minutes in the morning or the evening or both and write down 3 to 5 things that you were grateful for in that day. As you're writing those things and as your pen is moving in your hand, you're remembering them and it's filling you up with these like little like bubbles of joy that you don't even realize are actually over time going to change the way that you think. And it may not seem that way at first, but I would challenge yourself to do it for, 2 weeks and see how you feel. I guarantee you won't feel worse. And then that sort of does rewire your expectations because then you just go into the day thinking, okay, I've got to find 3 to 5 things to be grateful for today. And then you're able to find them in places you may have been overlooking, like they may be hiding in plain sight and you just weren't seeing them. And I think that will help a lot.
yeah, I think that one ultimately comes down to rewiring your brain and your perception. And again, super huge trust exercise, giving yourself a lot of grace. And yeah, just being that like pillar, that beacon of light in the middle of your life. And yeah, that one's a deep question. And I think that was a really good one to dive into. So thank you for submitting it.
Yeah, that was really good.
We're going to move on to the next question. So, question number 4. How do you stay confident and motivated to create content online when strangers on the internet or even people you know make assumptions about you, judge you, or leave rude/creepy comments, etc.?
Oh boy. This is a good one. Well, I think I have to start by saying that Jess and I are very blessed by our audience, by you guys, because every week we get such encouraging messages and like really beautiful stories from some of you who we have positively impacted. And that is not only so gratifying, but it also is very encouraging and really is sometimes the fuel that keeps at least me going sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But it's inevitable that if you are putting yourself out there and you're being vulnerable, that someone is going to take issue with something that you say, but really just kind of taking a step back and going, okay, whatever this person is saying to me or about me, whatever judgment they're passing is a projection of their own insecurity or their own fear or their own feelings of inadequacy, which are all also false. But because they've taken those things on as their reality and that's the consciousness that they're living in, they project it onto the people around them. And it's probably not just you. They're probably doing this to other people too. So I think that that's another thing to remember is maybe they are singling you out and maybe they're not, but you're probably not the first person that they've done this to, and you probably won't be the last. So that's another way to kind of like stop taking ownership of it. It's kind of like when we talk about anxiety, like instead of saying I have anxiety, saying like, oh, sometimes I experience anxiety. You know, nobody has haters. Sometimes you just experience the repercussions of the fact that this society is like often a very broken, sad, negative place. Like there have been moments where people have said things to me that have really gotten my inner critic up and running. It's like on the treadmill, like I'm coming for you. Oftentimes, because I am someone with such a loud inner critic, the external is saying a thing that maybe I've already thought about myself and they're just validating it. So I'm sitting there going, oh, okay, so this must be true of me because I've thought it before. And now somebody who doesn't even know me is seeing it too. But this podcast, for example, for the one person out of hundreds that takes an issue with something that we say or the way that we speak or anything like that, there are so many more of you who I feel like have really taken something good and like sort of life altering away from this at times. And I'm not saying that to be like, go us, but I'm saying that because you tell us, so it must be true. And that to me is more gratifying than anything because like this is totally a passion project for us. And our motivation was always just to like build a community and to impart some of our life experiences on people who may need an advocate and to inspire people to live as authentically as we strive to. And I think that we are doing that. But I think the way you stay confident is you build yourself a village of those people who lift you up and who believe in what you're doing, who even if they don't fully understand what you're doing, who can cheer you on and relate to you. And those voices become louder than the voices of truly strangers who are hiding behind usernames and faceless avatars to say things that they probably wouldn't ever say to you in person out of their own brokenness. I mean, it's sometimes hard. It's sometimes a little bit of an uphill climb, but that has helped me astronomically.
I think my goal for people who say things online is to be so grounded and sure of myself that I can almost have like a rubber bubble around me that these things would come and deflect off of them because I'm able to distinguish if they're true or not. And
Mm-hmm.
most of the time, I would say these things are not true. And does this work all the time? No. That's why I said that would be my goal. Sometimes I do get messages or comments that really are disheartening and I get riled up behind the scenes. I get angry about them or frustrated. But after that initial reaction or spike or whatever you want to call it, really leveling with myself and thinking like, okay, what is this person going through that made them spend the time to say this to somebody? It almost just makes you feel bad. You're like, wow, that's like you could be spending your time doing anything else on this entire earth, and that's what you chose to spend your time on. So I think a lot of times too, like Kristen was saying, it really is a reflection of like what's going on in their inner worlds. Like anybody's judgment of you is never about you. It's about a life experience they've had, a perception they've had. It might even be a perception about themselves. And oftentimes, when we get frustrated about things or we get annoyed at people, there might be a quality that that person's exhibiting that is actually within ourselves. Like I always say that people that you interact with that might irk you are kind of like a mirror to your own inner world. And once I found out that perspective, I was like, oh, shoot. I was
Mm.
able to call myself out on judgments I was making all of the time for other people. I was able to just gain so much perspective because I'm like, I don't really have a place to say something about this person if I'm also exhibiting a quality that's kind of like the same energy or feeling of it. So just kind of think about that. These people that do make these comments are just sort of unaware that they have a lot of stuff going on in their own inner life that they're not really willing to sit with because they might feel ashamed of it or they might feel extremely vulnerable, like to a place of total avoidance. And it's just easier to hide behind a computer and attack other people because then they don't have to deal with themselves. So
Yeah.
ultimately, yeah, like ultimately, like all of that aside, I think staying confident and motivated to create content online has to come from a place within that is genuine, that you genuinely and authentically enjoy doing it and you like to be creative, you find joy in it. That's why we keep doing it, is because we actually love to do it. And I think if we didn't, we just wouldn't anymore because it would be our truth. But when your truth is to lean into that and you have this creative spark, then that should be the motivator. It shouldn't be to get praise from people. It shouldn't be to try and prove something to people. It should just be because you genuinely love it and you believe in your message and you want to establish connection with others from like a really good intention, wholehearted place. And I think that's why we do what we do. That's why we put so much time and effort into ReDIScover and everything we've ever created. And I think that's where the fulfillment comes from. So, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it all up.
Yeah, I was talking to my stepdad about that actually, who doesn't fully understand what our podcast is. He's just not a podcast person. He doesn't quite get it. The most I can equate it to for him is like it's a radio show type
Yeah.
of thing. And we were talking recently when I was kind of feeling attacked and judged by, a stranger on the internet. And he was like, Kristen, you and Jess have been doing things just for the joy of it for over a decade. So unless the joy of it is now gone, keep doing it. And it was so simple. And I was like, you're right. I'm not going to let somebody take away my joy for a thing that I love just because they can't see its value.
Ultimately, stand in your joy. If it brings you joy and if it brings you fulfillment, do it. Lean into it. Be that rubber bubble as much as you can. Deflect off those comments and just do what feels aligned with you.
Absolutely. Okay. Question number 5.
Okay.
Have either of you suffered from imposter syndrome? I often doubt myself in my work.
Yeah, pretty much all the time. Um, I didn't know what imposter syndrome was until like within the past few years, and it fully explained how I had felt during a lot of my life. So, imposter syndrome is when you're in a situation where you basically feel like you don't belong or you're not good enough to be there. And that does often come up in professional situations because in society, like everyone has really high expectations of everyone being a super high performer. And if you feel like you're not an expert at something, you often do feel this weird inadequacy that is not true by any means, but we kind of take it on. It's like our human programming and conditioning again. So I often doubt myself in work too. You're not alone in feeling that at all. I think it even started when I was in school and everyone would have a club that they were in. And I never felt like I was like really good at anything. So I kind of like laid back and did things casually, but didn't fully invest my heart in it because I didn't want to be like, oh, I'm a dancer, but like I'm not that good at dancing. So I'll just like do it casually. But once everyone's better than me, I'm going to like hold back.
Mm.
And then, when it came to picking out a college major, it kind of like held back because I'm like, well, I'm not really good at any of this stuff. I don't know where I fit. And I picked something really general. And even to this day, I'm like, I don't really know if I even fit what I chose, but I got the degree. So, hey. And then, in work now, it's like, I feel like over the years, I've hopped so many jobs because I still haven't found that total alignment with myself. And I think I just kind of carried that stuff unknowingly. Like, this is an awareness I've uncovered recently with doing like therapy and coaching. I'm like, oh, shoot, I carried that through my whole human experience. So, all of that to say, I think what it comes down to is just like accepting that it's okay to feel that way. And like I said in one of the earlier questions, ask yourself if what you're feeling is true. Like, challenge your inner critic and ask, like, is this true? Like, am I actually not capable of doing this? Most likely the answer is like, you are fully capable of doing this. Sometimes you do have to push through really difficult situations or learn some skills that are more challenging because we're not all born with the innate talent to do every single thing on this earth. Like, we all have our own gifts, but sometimes we do need to learn things, and it takes time to learn things. And don't beat yourself up if you don't learn them right away. I know I kind of do that too. I'm like, well, if I'm not good at it right away, like I don't want to do it, but
Mhm.
these things, they take time, and it's okay. If it really does feel like at your core, like this is what I want to do, going into that situation, and even if the imposter syndrome comes on, trying to deflect it from your bubble again and just being like, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take one tiny step at a time. What is the one next thing I'm going to do? And go in there with as much confidence as you can muster up. Yeah. And just try to go in there and do your best. You're human like everyone else you're going to be working with. So if you make mistakes, it's okay. Like, everybody makes mistakes. Pretty much everything is figure outable. Show up and do your best. And the more time you invest in it, the more the imposter syndrome will quiet down, and the more you'll believe in yourself. You need to be the one to believe in yourself because you are the one who's going to drive your path in your life ultimately.
Everything is figure outable.
Yeah.
I love that.
It's one of my favorite phrases. You guys
I
get
love
all
it.
my phrases on ReDIScover. Like, I feel
Yes.
like I should just have like a master list of all these like mantras.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that more people than you realize suffer from imposter syndrome, especially now. Because the more of my parents' generation that I speak to, the more of them are like, Kristen, I would not want to be navigating society the way you have to.
It's hard.
Because comparison culture is so real and it just wasn't for them. Part of me wishes we all had corded phones and answering machines and we wouldn't have to see everyone's lives all the time. And then part of me loves that we're able to engage with so many people from so many places all the time. But I think that the reality is that it's a double-edged sword, and comparison is a knee-jerk reaction, and imposter syndrome is the result of that. And we're all comparing ourselves to everyone else's highlight reel. And not only are we not always showing them grace, but we're not always showing ourselves grace. And I think that, as simple as it is, if you just show up in your job, in your relationship, in your life, while you're making dinner, whatever you're doing, if you show up every day as you and you do the best that you can, then that's all you can do. And you have to kind of lay everything else to rest at a certain point. Justin and I have talked about before, like, we don't really like running. We're never going to be those 5 a.m. marathoners. But that's okay. Like, so I don't need to look at somebody who does do that and go, oh, I'm not like that. I'm not as good as they are. I'm not as accomplished as they are. I don't have as much willpower or discipline as they do. No, it's just the decision. They just woke up this morning and they did that. And I woke up this morning and I didn't. It's not that deep. Some things are not that deep. And I know coming from me, that sounds weird, but it's true. It's true. I think you just have to, at a certain point, put up your hands and go, you know what? It's not that deep. And I'm doing the best that I can. And if you're showing up and you're actively learning and you're actively, asking questions, and if it's in your work saying, actually, I don't have much experience with that. Would you be willing to show me? That to me is more commendable than someone pretending that they have it all together and then not delivering a thing that I expected them to deliver, because I think that they know. Well, if they didn't know, well, then I'll just show them or tell them, or I'll be the one to be shown or told, So I think grace becomes a huge factor, but also just kind of get away from it all. Shut your phone off, go be by yourself for a while and just reconnect with you and stop comparing yourself to everyone else. And you'll find that you're able to show up more authentically and genuinely and do the good work that you are capable of. And that will be celebrated so much more than this falsified facade that you put up because you think it's what everybody wants to see from you. Because on a very innate level, people can tell the difference.
Again, an amazing question. All of these questions have been incredible. Thank you all so much for submitting them and for giving us such a thought-provoking episode to create. These are all things that I think we've dealt with on, a personal level to some extent, and also being able to kind of dissect them helps us, and I hope it helps you as well. Like, it's been very revealing and very inspiring as well.
Yeah, this was actually a lot of fun and, again, very thought-provoking. And as we kind of make episodes like these, I feel like Jess and we end up learning a lot too from you and just from going through the motions of these like devolvements of thought. So thank you for provoking our minds to higher vibrations and higher themes of consciousness too, and giving us a lot of really good stuff to think about. So thank you for submitting your questions to our proverbial newspaper column. We hope that you're enjoying summer school so far.
We are so grateful to have you here. And as always, we will talk to you next Tuesday.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of ReDIScover.
Please subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening. Your reviews are what keep us going, and we'd love to hear from you.
Join us every Tuesday for a new conversation and let us know what you think we should talk about next.
Follow us on Instagram at positively.kristen and at jessicafay508. And check out Jess's blog at theroadjesstraveled with 1l.com.
Until next time,
stay frumpy.